Okay, so an interesting thing is that when with the twin paradox and relativity, I've thought about this a lot. It was always very confusing to me. It's like, when does the clock, if two people going at speed to each other instantaneously, the clock is supposedly going slower for both of them. So how does the one turning around? I could kind of imagine, well, the math works out and things go differently. But how does that work out? Well, it's not true. You can't take this instantaneous. There is no instantaneous velocity. Velocity is over time, requires an infinitesimal time period, or the Planck's distance, I guess. But in math, calculus, an infinitesimal time period over which there is velocity. So you're either in an inertial frame or not. At any one of those instances, you're either under acceleration or not. Now, if you're under acceleration, if I'm on a rocket ship going half a g acceleration, so I have half gravity, it feels like to me, then it's not true that everything else seems like it's going slower. In front of me, things seem like they're going faster. So that's what happens when the twin, it slows down and they're firing their rockets, and in relativity, that's like traveling back towards the person you're still going away from, but in the direction of the acceleration. Then they speed up. If you hit those jets and you're looking at your video feed from that planet you've been traveling away from, and it's been going slow, it'll start to speed up. In fact, it'll catch up, and all the math will work out by the time you accelerate enough to go back to that frame of reference. And there's some other paradoxical examples that I'd like to talk about, some of which I don't really have a clear picture on why it works out. So I think the way to get a hold of this kind of stuff is being honest with ourselves, is looking at what the confusing parts are, and then just trying to go back to the data, go to the math, say, well, how does the math say? And then try to follow metaphors from the math into how we are. So for example, with relativity, in principle, if everything was unconnected and just flying apart, everything would be like the nihilist relativists say, all unconnected. But in fact, we're all doing these curving paths through time-space and bumping into each other, and all of those events are moments of correlation where you have nearly the same inertial frames, facts are in common, and so on. So to me, that's drawing a metaphor from what is true mathematically, which, for example, that accelerated non-inertial frames are not relativistic. There's non-relativistic elements to accelerated frames. And but anyway, just simple mathematically, just to point out, when you're accelerating, everything in front of you is traveling the clock is going faster, including infinitely fast, all the way out at infinity or whatever, right? And behind you, it's going slower back to a kind of event horizon behind you. All right, cheers.